First we're gonna have a set of readings. We're gonna have 6 readers. Then we're gonna take a break so everybody can get something to eat. And then we'll have 7 more readers. And then after that, we're gonna have the raffle, okay? If there's time after that, you can feel free to talk to the people who performed. And/or we may also have a little bit of extra time for 1 or 2 people who wanna do an open mic or introduce a book. Okay, but the main thing is we want to try and keep on track so that everybody gets a chance to read and you get a chance to read. Okay? Okay, so the first thing I want to say is I want to thank every one of you who has come here either as a performer or a supporter. I mean, without all you guys, this wouldn't be possible. And we really appreciate it, and we want you to know that. Okay? So I'm going to start off with a brief reading. And then I'm going to help Sunshine. She's going to be doing a nice performance piece, and we'll have our readers come up after that. Now, some of the folks who are going to read are going to be coming from back there, so I'll be reading a short 3-line haiku while we're waiting. Okay, so we won't have a lot of dead time. Okay? So I'll start off with my reading now, and then we'll get Sunshine. So the first piece that I'm going to do is the form is called a haibun, and what that basically is, it's a very short story, or what is now called also sudden fiction. And interspersed with that, we have haiku. Okay, so haiku is a 3-line poem that comes from the Japanese tradition, and I think you'll enjoy the pieces. So I'll start with this one. It's called A Gathering of Friends. 3 friends, 2 centuries of memory between them, gather at one friend's house. One has traveled an hour, another cross-country. They meet in small-town Ellensville, a bucolic burg in Catskill country, part of the old Borscht Belt, where comedians got their start and boxers once trained in their sweet science. Leaves lisp in wind. An albino skunk peers from a quart of wood. The friends sip wine, years having left one bald, one gray, one in between, all laughing at the changes time gave birth to. Then each in turn recalls some incident that saucers eyes until bellies jiggle about who did what to whom and what were they thinking or not at the time, which could have been yesterday, though decades had passed. Seashell fossils in old stone walls, a raven squawk. The sun arcs, the moments linger, they marvel at the wine, mourn the losses, consider themselves fortunate. To have such friends and earn their trust without begrudging success or judging failure, what more is needed till we meet again, but hugs all around? Afterglow, the North Star brightens and calls me home. This next piece is also a haibun, At the Mercy of Poseidon. Body surfing, I'm caught in a blue-green field crawl. The Pacific's roaring thunder, blasting my ear's cavity, as I, having seconds ago flown before the 7th wave's China white crest, plunge now, hard and fast as a hawk, after prey towards what I hope is sand, not stone. When in an instant the world turns upside down, and I inexplicably land on my feet, astonished, praising the God of good fortune. MRI test, no tumor, no clot. This next piece is called Justice. They sit on a high dais, on 9 thrones of oak, in solemn black robes, elevated by senatorial approbation, empowered to interpret the theurgy of constitutional law and the catechism declared in our country's Bill of Rights. Judges dubbed wise by dint of intellectual prowess and the rigorous demands of privileged education. Their role to arbitrate, to rise above chicanery, and the petty politics of mere mortals genuflecting at their feet. To be the antidote to the power-hungry who would debase our sanctified state like callow grifters. And yet, what lies beneath this current crop? It's heresy and sacrilege. Now, corporations of people, money's corruption equates free speech, and presiding from their lofty perch, they ally themselves to the trickle-down, where workers' rights are ground underfoot, their wages recalling the slave trade. And not content with the rigged game of voter denial, purged rolls, and gerrymandering, they accede to trenchant bigots placing slip knots on a woman's right to choose. And these are the judges on a court named Supreme. Friends, there religions were born and mythologies created, knowing the blarney from truth. Each in their own time was a wingman who witnessed good fortune and bad. Brothers who watched you wrestle the cask or down the flaming shot, who laughed when you singed your mustache like some toothsome Viking warrior, and saw the berserker in you when an errant word proved dangerous, and back to back you stood with them when everybody else had fled. They were the co-pilots of your spring break flight, 24 hours on the I-95, as you migrated from deep snow to soft sand, and girls barely clad in bikinis. And let's raise a glass to the sisters, the ones who fed you when the pickings were slim and you needed a meal, or got you up dancing when you might be inclined to mope. And they were the girls who warned you when your eyes strayed to where they didn't belong. And when you wouldn't listen, they held you tight when the object of your desire used your heart for a dartboard or twisted the knife. And they are the women you could still call at any time, day or night, as they can call on you. These are the brothers and sisters with whom you've inhaled life. 10 years pass, 20, but you pick up where you left off, as if it were yesterday. You reminisce, reconnecting, each memory a moment treasured, each victory a celebration, each sorrow shared pain. And together you count your blessings, and are grateful for then, for now, for whatever tomorrow may bring. You're not alone. Okay, so we're going to have Sunshine Lutey come up next, and I'm going to help her with some of her performance. And this is a little haiku while we're waiting. In places where you never thought to see it, Christmas glitter. The next reader is Sunshine Lutey.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Statue of Liberty, and I'm very concerned about the plight of the immigrants. In 1776, America's Declaration of Independence was signed. 86 years later, Lincoln freed the slaves. 90 years later, France began to construct me as a gift to America. Emma Lazarus wrote a poem for funding for the construction of the pedestal, my pedestal, that was built by Americans. 1886, I was completed and dedicated. 17 years later, Emma's poem was mounted inside my pedestal. Post-World War II, Robert wrote music for the play that included the powerful words, give me your tired, your poor. This beautiful song. We've been traveling far without a home, but not without a star. Free, oh, we want to be free. Never looking back again. Maybe someday America will truly be the land of the free, the home of the brave, where the homeless, tempest-tossed, can yearn for, reach the shores of our country, and fulfill their dreams. Then, once again, America will be a true melting pot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunshine. Okay, so the next person we're going to have reading is David Hartman.
The title of my presentation is Growing Up Fast. It's been a kind of memoir. It's been said that if you want to grow up fast, you join the army. Well, that actually this is a memoir about my early life. I was a somewhat precocious young man out of high school at 16. In those days, they graduated the smarter kids at around 16. But I had no vocational plan to speak of, and I had heard that there was a government program where young people, young men particularly, could learn of an interesting trade. So I enrolled in this U.S. program, and I was sent up to northern Maine to learn to be an aircraft mechanic, of all things. I was always handy with tools and things. So I got to Maine, and in about 3 months, I became a licensed airplane mechanic. Of course, the dark clouds of war were over the world at that time. We're talking about 1942. And following this 3-month training, the government found a job for me at a United States Army Air Base in Connecticut called Bradley Field. And I began working as a civilian aircraft mechanic for the U.S. Army Air Force. And I worked on fighter planes. It was a fighter base, and the 3 kinds of aircraft fighters were P-51 Mustangs, they were Lockheed P-38 twin fuselage fighter planes, and my favorite of all was the Republic of Aviation P-47 Thunderbolts, which had a peculiar roar to them that was very musical in a way. And as I worked there alongside soldiers, it became very clear that it wouldn't be too long before the long reaches of the draft were going to bring me into somewhat more direct contact with the war that was going on in Europe. And so, rather than to be subject to the draft and to be perhaps put into some branch of service where I was temperamentally unsuited, I decided to enlist into the Army Air Force and do something that I felt I was suited for, which was flying. Well, I passed all the tests to go to aviation cadet training school, but one. I was colorblind. I certainly didn't know that I was colorblind. I had spent my early years totally thinking that I could see red and blue, yellow, black, and white very clearly. But the officials in the Army told me differently. They said, you are colorblind. You failed the Dr. Ishihari's color wheel test. And they proved to me that I was. It's an inherited problem. My own daughter is suffering from the identical thing. It's not so debilitating, but nonetheless, I was colorblind. They said, we can't let you fly. You cannot be a flyer. However, because I was a trained aircraft mechanic, they said, we're sending you over to England to work on airplanes, on B-17 flying fortresses. And so off I went aboard the Queen Mary over to England, and at an air base I began working on repairing the flying fortresses that were coming back from the missions over Italy and Germany, full of holes from aircraft shrapnel, anti-aircraft, and some of the Luftwaffe fighter planes that had attacked the flying fortresses. I did this and enjoyed being in England. Actually, it was, certainly there was no fighting going on there. There were certainly airplane raids over England. There were bombs being dropped. The most fearsome things were the buzz bombs. But I did get to spend a lot of time in London, and of course grew up a little bit quickly there, learned how to drink, and met some girls that I had fun with. And all this was rather quick. Here I was only 18 years old. Toward the fall of 1944, the officials came around and said, our losses up in the front are fearsome. Many, many American soldiers on the front lines up in Germany are being killed. We need to take a whole bunch of you guys and move you into combat training. And so for about 3 weeks of intensive training with bayonets, bullets, bombs, hand grenades, crawling on our bellies, we went through fearsome training, and then sent us over across the channel to join General Patton's Third Army. I was assigned to the 9th Armored Infantry. Off into Germany we rode and marched into the most fearsome fighting of World War II, into the Battle of the Bulge, the Battle of Hürtgen Forest, on my belly, in the mud, shooting, stabbing, throwing hand grenades, just like in the movies, except this was real, very frightening. The noise, the sound, the chaos, madness, that's the words that Jack Hawkins used in the movie The Bridge Over the River Kwai. Madness, killing and shooting. But in the interim periods between fighting, we got to meet people. We learned about comradeship, about loyalties, about hatred and love. Loved and romanced many young girls, killed many young men, Nazis, of course. Got discharged, ultimately, came home, unwounded, actually, fortuitously, The only wound I suffered was from this German bayonet, but no Purple Heart, because it was a self-inflicted wound, for I stuck myself accidentally. Nonetheless, this is my souvenir taken from a German prisoner. Came home after all this, still at age 21. Talk about growing up fast. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next reader is Yvette Gao. And Yvette, if you can come on up. Moving on, the surf break sound of distant traffic.
Right. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Los Angeles, 1988. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, happiness is a byproduct, not a goal. Enter Rodrigo Mejia. A legal immigrant, you know, one with green cards and all the papers, from Honduras, who arrived in Los Angeles with visions of sugar plums and used car lots dancing in his brain. Rodrigo was a determined person to assimilate the American way. But like all immigrants, he got things sort of mixed up, a little confused. And that did not bother him one bit. You see, Rodrigo was a whiz when it came to repairing, building, finding where that drip of oil came from, and anything else having to do with the mechanics of a car. He sold oranges on street corners, and as people drove up, he would listen to their motors idle and would be able to tell them what the heck was wrong with their cars. He then sold jeans out of the back of an old Chevy, and he could tell people, well, you know what, I bet your car would look better with a unicorn painted on it. And he painted the unicorns. Then he got a great idea. Let me save up some money. So he moved into the garage of a friend of his. And in that garage, he thought and thought, and he saved and was able to buy 2 used cars. He sold the used cars. And then he said, well, let me buy some more. So he saved some more and bought several more used cars. And this continued until he had enough to open a used car lot. So he worked, and Rodrigo earned an excellent rating from the Better Business Bureau, and he even joined the Rotary Club. Billboards and bus benches in the community displayed Rodriguez's increasingly broad smile. But he wanted more to do. He wanted to open up bigger, better used car lot. So Rodrigo said, what do I do? What do I do? Think. I know I will do something for the community. Yes, but what to do? So while he was watching the end of a Miss America pageant, he said, I know we will have a Miss Honduras pageant. So he gathered like-minded Hondurans and said, yes, we will do that. We will have a Miss Honduras pageant. We will crown the queen, and she will walk down and she will reign. But only one thing, who's going to crown her first? There hasn't been another Miss Honduras. What to do, think. I know. we will have the contestants sell raffle tickets. And the number 1 raffle ticket seller will be crowned Miss Honduras. And the number 2 Miss, oh yeah, she will be the one that will crown the queen. Brilliant idea. But then, as Rodrigo thought about it, maybe that second place contestant wouldn't be the ideal Miss Honduras. So, why don't we offer someone a year's supply of rice and beans, and they will surely do that for rice and beans. Enter Martha Castillo. Martha had a figure that was attested to her infinity for chicken tamales and watching TV. Finally, Martha acquiesced. Yes, I will do it. Maybe this will get the old boyfriend to marry me if he saw me dressed in a crown with a robe and all sorts of goodies. I know he would ask the question. So, on that wonderful night, she went ahead and did it. And Lola Torres was crowned Miss Honduras. And everybody was quiet. As Martha got up there to put the crown on her head, but Martha was sort of fat and sort of short, and Miss Torres was sort of thin and sort of tall, so she really couldn't get the crown on her head. Enter the boyfriend, ta-da, who ran up to the stage, grabbed the crown from his sweetheart, and placed it on Miss Honduras. Everyone was happy. And when you think about it, that's the way immigrants are. They really try harder. So, in the end, Martha got her year's supply of rice and beans. And every Saturday night, the boyfriend would come over and they would sit down and watch TV as a couple. And the used car dealer, Rodrigo, he now sells Yugos.
Thank you, Yvette. Our next person is Barbara Goldstein. She's going to be doing her performance. Menopause, dueling thermostats.
I have never seen so many people who don't talk to other people. Right in a family. Children don't talk to parents. Parents don't talk to children. Friends get angry, they don't speak. And so I wrote this. How to stop the silence. How do we stop the silence? I ask. This is an enormous, tremendous task. For two people are filled to the brim with false pride, holding anger and hurt deep inside. They're afraid to express those feelings they feel. They might lose control, so keep them concealed. But what did I do? What did I say to deserve this treatment? But does silence pay? Must I say I am sorry when he is wrong? When I know I am right, must I sing her song? We all make mistakes, except don't hide. Just strip yourself of all that false pride. Reach out to each other. There's nothing to it. Have faith in yourself. You'll see you can do it. Get rid of that anger. Get rid of that pain. Then you can smile and be happy again. Resentment, like pus, can slowly spread. Just speak. Don't regret what you should have said. And then I wrote, and my darling Peg told me to read this too. I wrote, silence is not always golden. Life is too short to hold a grudge. One won't move and the other won't budge. Say what you mean and mean what you say, but don't say it mean. You can find the way. I can change only me. I must mind my own biz. Simply accept another for what he is. You know, faith can move mountains, and so can love. Guess who's in charge? Right, it's God above. So try not to sweat the real small stuff. Just talk it out. Enough is enough. And if he won't move, I've done my best. I'll let go and let God do the rest. And that wonderful gal sitting there with her feet up, which isn't very polite, I guess. I wrote a poem for her last night. She wanted me to read Accepting Change, but I'm going to read the poem I gave her. Amazing Peg. When I tell you what happened, you won't believe it, for she's here, she's right here now. Yes, it's hard to conceive it. In the operating room just 9 days ago, but she said she'd be here, and you see, it is so. She's a teacher, a writer, a linguist, too. It seems that there's nothing that she can't do. She's sweet, she is, and kind, oh yes, and creative, we know. We're all glad you're here, because we all love you so.
Okay, we're going to have a sixth storyteller, and then after that we'll be taking our lunch break. And Phil Silverman's going to come up and entertain us here. And while he's coming up, I got this little haiku for you. Leaves cast adrift. My past imperfect. Yours too.
Going back to 1965 in North Jersey, Hudson County, when I was 14, one of the worst summers I've ever had. The Yankees went from first to sixth place, and Mantle drove in 46 runs. Bad. I was 14 though, my first girlfriend, and her name was, I won't give you her name, I'll give you her initials, OK. I was up. Clear right up. But I want to talk about my first slice of pizza. My first slice of pizza. And Jewish home, anything red was too exotic. We stayed away from all these things that I love today. And so I had to sneak past my house to go up to Bergen Line Avenue in Union City for Bergen Line pizza, which I found out was really Tony's pizza. My first slice of pizza, I was very nervous. The place itself was, remember, in 1965, back east, there were 2 steps up by the counter, and nothing after that. I don't know what that was. Like whatever they had back there. The place was very narrow. You know, the gray linoleum sticking up in the corners of the room. No adhesive quality there. But they had one thing I really dug was the fluorescent lights. Fluorescent lights, new. And they actually use save power by keeping them on. I still don't understand that. So we approached Tony's, and I see a lady behind the counter. I said, "Where's Tony?" Where's Tony? This lady, she's quite attractive. She looks like Polly Bergen from that movie with Robert Mitchum, Cape Fear. It took me a week to find that online. I said, well, maybe it's T-O-N-I, so they got the sign wrong outside. Whatever. But she did not look happy as we approached. Me and Turk, my buddy, He was the leader of the group with Joe, Ed, and Larry, and Jack, and so many of us. It was just me and Turk because it was a very personal day. The first slice of pizza, so Turk is the worldly friend with all the great finesse. Great man of the world. He had a summer home in Raparius, New York. I didn't have anything like that. Anyway, this very tall lady, about 6'1", I'll call her Polly Berg, and she did not look happy. And Turk had the finesse, give you a slice of a Coke, 40 cents, man. What do you want? I'll have like what he had. You want a drink? You got Coke? 40 cents. I just got nickels. You got 8 of them? Yeah. There's no chairs back there. You have to eat outside at the bus stop. 42nd Street, New Jersey, 1965. I don't know how to eat this, man. This looks like a pyramid panel, you know. So do you eat it from the top down to the crust or the base? He goes, no, you start at the top. I said, wow, pretty good. I said, are you supposed to burn the roof of your mouth? Yeah. And we're talking, we're a little wondering what's going on in reality. You know, LBJ is talking about sending us to Indochina. I said, well, we got 4 years. I doubt that's going to be still happening by 1969, 1970. A little depressed. I'm depressed about the Yankees. Had our priorities straightened out. So by the way, I thought the pizza was, the only thing I could compare it to was a grilled cheese sandwich with the tomato on top and no top bread. That must have been an interesting conversationalist that day, I'll tell you that. Anyway, enjoyed it very much. I found out that it was not an Italian original. It actually originated in Egypt, so I didn't feel bad about that reference to a pyramid panel. I thought that was pretty cool. But my Italian friends insisted that Rome had 2 major things, pizza and Jesus. That was in bad taste, but yeah, I'm just giving you the, what's that, the spirit of the times. So Turk and I separate. He goes home, I go home. I say, oh my God, you know, I didn't tell my mother what I was doing after. So I come up the steps, and mother goes, what's all that red stuff on that shirt? So it wasn't pizza. Oh, it was, but I didn't mean it. It's like, you're not going to tell Dad, are you? I never had pizza. All right, the next time you want to go up there and have pizza, come home and take off your white shirt, put on a dark shirt, for crying out loud. Oh my God. Anyway, so long time ago, and we all have our favorite pizza haunts. Like, anybody from New York City, Greenwich Village? Ray's Pizza, 6th Avenue. You were there? That's fantastic. You were the guy. Oh, no. No. That was like a 1936 Hudson mudguard. It was like this big, this white slice of pizza. Then moved on from there to Baruka's Pizza in Seaside Park, New Jersey. I said, this is like the best thing I have ever had. And I want to ask for the recipe. And I heard the owner confide to a friend. He goes, it's in the cheddar cheese. Tell me about it. You have cheddar cheese. Oh, man. I never made it public well until now, but it was 1997. And of course, Amore's pizza, no plug, no spam. I like Amore by Staters, except, you know, that nice amber oil that's a little too much. You take a little nap and you dab it. And so, folks, 1965. Oh, yeah, I want to mention my lady. I had a crush on her. I found out, as I have told people, she took her own life. So, you know, every time, here I am, 67, every time I had a piece of pizza, I just remember her attitude, and that very essential woman, you know. I discussed it with Cheryl. And I just kept calling her Polly Bergen. Now, I really can't love a piece of pizza. I think back to that lady and I felt that I should have made a better impression. With their little nickels. Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, thanks for all your hard listening. Now it's time to get a little bite to eat and have a break. You lead us off.
Thanks, Scott. Well, I write science fiction, among other things, and one of the things that science fiction writers like to write about is if this goes on. This is one I wrote, back in the 70s or 80s. Can you hear it? That's better. Okay. It's called A Brief History of the Future. It was a close race, but the collective Green parties beat out the Spacers by a narrow margin, gaining tenuous control of both houses of Congress, as well as the presidency. Naturally, if you'll pardon the pun, vast numbers of environmentally focused laws were immediately enacted, changed, or repealed, depending upon their original intent, all designed to save the earth from its thoughtless inhabitants. The symbiotes, as the Greens call themselves, continued to win over the parasites, their name from the Spacer Party, at increasing margins. The skies over large cities began clearing. Mass transit became a human right. Lung infections plummeted, and stars again shone brightly in the clear night skies. Industrialized countries, responding to a rising media and internet blitz, funded by American fossil fuel and tobacco taxes, gravitated steadily toward green symbiote control. Within a decade, the United Nations fell under the control of the symbiotes. The Security Council became completely green. The UN granted itself control over the global environment, ratified by an overwhelming majority of member states. They funded global projects by giving themselves the right to tax the exploitation of natural resources. Fossil fuels were taxed by the gram or milliliter, paid immediately in hard currency at the wellhead or mine, before the raw materials could be shipped to a refinery. This choked fossil fuel production to a standstill, impoverishing OPEC countries overnight and breaking their death grip on the free world economy. The new taxes went to underwrite a burgeoning alternative fuel industry, impeding the development or implementation of any energy-conserving technology was declared a crime against nature. The formerly all-powerful mineral energy resource empires found their secret records and patents pillaged and posted on the internet by zealous insiders. The PAP engine replaced the Wankel. Peanut and cottonseed oil replaced diesel fuel, fueling, in turn, the Confederate States of America's successful succession, this time in a bloodless coup spearheaded by the Carter family. The newly reborn CSA was immediately granted a seat on the UN Security Council, where it cast the deciding vote to outlaw the combustion of heavy hydrocarbons. All new Global Science Foundation grants were tied to research and development of alternative energy sources, efficient food production methods, and pollution-free transportation. The weirdos came out of the woodwork, and weird science was the guiding force of the next few decades. Overnight, the UN Watchguard on Industry and National Defense, UNWIND, banned all industrial pollutants, chemical pesticides, and weapons of mass destruction. Nuclear reactors were dismantled. Atomic fuel, nuclear, chemical, and biological weapon stockpiles, and all nuclear waste, including that in deep storage, were collected and launched into the sun, expending the entire global inventory of space launch vehicles. Major pollutants were now gone, so attention gravitated towards ever smaller sources of pollution. The tobacco industry was retargeted. A new attack was launched based upon the current philosophical, kinder, gentler approach towards social revolution. Research focused on alternative uses of tobacco. By genetically combining the tobacco plant with corn, a new crop was produced whose multitudinous seeds converted almost directly into alcohol, and whose leaves contained derivatives of tar and nicotine, which acted as octane boosters for the resultant cleaner burning alcohol fuel. The sun-dried stalks were then used as fuel to distill the alcohol. Any residue was turned back into the earth as fertilizer for the next crop. The carbon dioxide released by this process was easily absorbed by a vast new growth foliage, as innovative vegetative solutions were found for many of man's former problems. The new crops rapidly replaced old tobacco fields, driving the consumer cost of cigarettes to over 10 global credits apiece. It soon became too wasteful to smoke tobacco, and another silent revolution had become history. All was right with the world. The air was pure, the stars were bright, the planet and its inhabitants were all healthy. Monies once wasted on space research had been leveraged to turn the entire planet into an environmental utopia. It was a happy, healthy, well-contented world population which, while secretly wishing they had nuclear-tipped launch vehicles still, spent their last few days anxiously watching the 5-kilometer-wide Nicolaitan asteroid swing in from the vast reaches of space and come to rest spectacularly upon what was once known as Kansas City, but is now referred to as the Great Inland Ocean by the 42nd Cockroach Dynasty. And that's the ever-loving end. Viewpoint. We view things differently, you and I. A living canvas or a cloud-filled sky. The birth of daylight or a rosy dawn. A verdant Caput Street or a well-kept lawn. Your viewpoint does not mesh with mine. Ambrosia dew or tasty wine. The footprints of an angry god or divots missing from the side. Why must there be a wrong or right? Is everything either black or white? Are there now no shades of gray? Must I say night when you say day? Does dawning beat the setting sun? And when you walk, cannot I run? And can't you sit although I stand? Is there not room within this land for many different points of view? There's one for me, one for you. Why can't our viewpoints disagree? Must one be shared by you and me? We look at life quite differently. Aquatic universe, azure sea, one cries when happy, one when sad. One spanks the children when they're bad. And though your world is not like mine, I'd like to spend some time in thine. So if you'll come and visit me and use my eyes and try to see a little bit of what I view, I'll try to do the same for you. For only when our blockades cease may we find harmony and peace. Go tell your friends, parents too, that we have different points of view. And neither's right, nor is it wrong. It's just a slightly different song. So I'll sing mine and you sing yours. Together we can sail a course with bliss, each other still be free, while slowly reaching harmony. And when our voices, loud and strong, can join our neighbors in this song, each with a variant melody, then we shall all be truly free. Thank you.
Okay, so Miranda McPhee is going to be our next storyteller, and we're happy to have her. She's been running around taking care of all of us, so we'll give her an extra hand.
That was the maid, this is the storyteller. I have a tick box at the back. Okay, cause and effect. And the question for you is, whose fault was this? The father or the son? Can you hear me at the back? Okay. If Jasper hadn't
precise moment early Tuesday morning to change the song on his iPhone, just as he stepped into the road without looking. Mrs. Lister would not have slammed on her brakes to avoid hitting him. Mr. Baxter would not have rear-ended Mrs. Lister, and behind him, Mr. Glauber's headlights would not have become entangled with Mr. Baxter's taillights. As the three drivers got out to inspect the damage and roar at the inconvenience and cost, Jasper disappeared round the corner, completely oblivious to the saga. Fortunately, no ambulances were required, and the dutiful exchange of information took place. Then Mrs. Lister and Mr. Glauber drove off. Mr. Baxter's car, however, was crumpled at both ends, and he needed a tow truck. 2 hours later, fuming outwardly and inwardly, Mr. Baxter arrived at the office. Of all the days this had to happen, this was going to bend his week completely out of shape. His executive assistant, Connie, was busy readying them for both fulfilling the new job available in the office. As a hiring manager, Mr. Baxter felt extremely important. Bedazzled by the high quality of alarmingly similar resumes, Mr. Baxter had only managed to whittle the list of 30 down to 22. Connie and he decided the only fair way to interview was alphabetically by last name, and Mr. Baxter duly confirmed with the HR recruiting manager that this was okay. Since it was now Tuesday afternoon, a morning of interviews had been lost, throwing the whole process into disarray. Mr. Baxter was under management pressure to fill the position this week, and under domestic pressure to be ready to depart on Friday night to spend 2 weeks with Mrs. Baxter's sister in Maine. He needed to curtail the interviews. Since he believed his hiring choice would impact the course of one young person's career, and therefore had to be considered with the utmost care, he emailed Edward Davidson, the prickly head of HR, for advice. Mr. Baxter's email arrived as Edward, the head of HR, was having lunch with John Pringle, the regional manager. "Would you believe this, John?" said Edward Davidson as he scanned the message. "There's a level 2 manager interviewing a short list of 22 candidates alphabetically." 22? For an intern, for heaven's sake! It's a 6-week job, Christ! Does this man have any idea of how much effort this takes in HR? He wants to know how to shorten his list as he had a fender bender and he's late for work. Really? Cut off the list at a certain letter, suggested John Pringle. The head of HR nodded, looking down the list. There's Needham, Quinn, Roberts, there's 4 under S, then a few more. So perhaps cut off at S. John noted that Pringle was not on the list, so his son had obviously not applied for the job. Cut it off at R, he said, now disinterested and irritated. Edward demurred. I'm not sure. Maybe S would be better. There are 4 S's. Baxter could probably see those people. Now, cut it off at listed R. Definitely R. As you said, it's just an internship, said John curtly. Edward Davidson finally agreed, and Mr. Baxter was happy. He would interview until the end of Wednesday, produce a short list of 3 till Thursday, interview again on Friday, and all be sewn up by Friday night. One by one, starting with Mark S. Adams, the candidates came and went, and at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, Mr. Baxter ushered out Christina A. Roberts, the last interviewee, on a list duly cut off at R. Meanwhile, the unlucky candidates from S to Z in the alphabet of last names were informed the post was filled. Yes, of course I understand, the leader said. Thank you for letting me know. Only David J. Scott seemed particularly put out and rang back 3 times, pleading unsuccessfully to be given an interview. Everything went according to plan, and on Friday afternoon, Derek Fairway accepted the job, Edward Davidson breathed a sigh of relief in HR, and Mr. Baxter went home to pack. 2 days later, Jasper had lunch with his parents. A regular event he considered a bit of a survival course. Just 3 weeks ago, he'd had a stand-up row with his father about his reticence to apply for a job at Marston Electronics, where his father worked. "I'm the regional manager. I can make sure at least you consider for an interview. You'd be a perfect fit," said his father, John Pringle. "I want to do this on my own," came his son's petulant reply. "I don't want to be accused of nepotism like in the last job, where you put in a word with the managing director. Everyone found out. How can I possibly avoid that if I got a job at Marston?" "You figure that out if it bothers you so much. Use your imagination," Jasper's father snapped in frustration. "But I suggest you apply this week. This job won't be around forever." So as Jasper sat down with his parents for lunch this Sunday, he could sense a storm brewing. Well, said his father jarringly, how's the job search going? All rightish, said Jasper. His father waited impatiently for more while his mother fussed around nervously in the kitchen. I applied for a few jobs. And? Nothing yet. I had one invitation to interview, but it was cancelled. Did you apply for the job at Marston? Yes. When's the interview? That's who cancelled. What? Did they say why? They said the job was no longer available. Clearly, Jasper's father did not believe his son, but he held his tongue. On Monday morning, John Pringle rang the HR recruitment manager. No, he was told, she would have called that John's son had sent in his resume. John Pringle called his son, fury in his voice. Jasper, you told me you sent your resume to Marston. I checked with HR and they had not received it. You never applied to the job. You lied to me. Why the hell did you do that? Why didn't you apply? I did. Don't you dare lie to me, shouted his father. I'm not lying, said Jasper, exasperated. I did apply, but you told me to use my imagination as I was concerned about getting the job because of you. So, I used Mum's maiden name, Scott. And I was going to tell them at the first interview that I don't go by David, but prefer my middle name Jasper. But I didn't get that far. They cancelled on me. David J. Scott, who rang back 3 times. Just for once, John Pringle was speechless. Cut off the list at R. Definitely R, he had said.
Thank you, Miranda. So our next storyteller is going to be Dennis Glauber. Dennis? The narcissist. Practicing notes.
Some years ago, my study group in Seattle devoted an entire semester to John Steinbeck's great novel, The Grapes of Wrath. In addition to reading the book, we were exposed to the music of the era, notably that of Woody Guthrie. We inspected artifacts made by participants in the events of the 1930s and shown to us by their descendants. We reviewed the classic John Ford movie, which I'm sure many of you remember, made 1940, and we saw a stage play based on the novel. The storyline is too well known to require a detailed outline. Suffice it to say that in this almost biblical saga to the promised land of California, the Joad family and their cohorts from the Dust Bowl of the West, Southwest, Midwest, Texas, and mainly Oklahoma, from which they got the pejorative, scornful epithet, the Okies. They, of course, were on their way to California and encountered just about every hostile assault that humankind, in the form of harsh authority, resentment, and greed, can inflict, compounded by the natural devastations of drought and flood. There are several themes developed in the novel. One is epitomized by Ma Joad in the movie that was Jane Darwell, who got the Oscar for her role. Her final speech, to the effect that we are the people will go on. The rich will come and go, but we cannot be crushed and will not disappear. We are the people. There's also her son Tom, Henry Fonda. There was also her son Tom's pronouncement when he, having killed a man, must for the good of the family strike out on his own. When his mother despairs that she will never see him again and will not know what is happening to him, he assures her that he will be everywhere. Wherever an underdog is fighting for survival, he'll be there. At about this time, my attention was drawn to the words of the great Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. Neruda recollected that it was as a small child that he first conceived a precious idea that all of humanity is somehow together. And this resonates with the most central theme of Steinbeck's novel, delivered by the former preacher, Jim Casey. He can preach no more because he has lost the spirit. A preacher, he tells Tom, has to know, and he doesn't know. He can only keep asking. Several times in the novel, Casey, pre-echoing Neruda, opines that each man's spirit is just part of a greater spirit. Maybe all men got one big soul everybody's a part of. Of course, much the same idea was wonderfully expressed 3 centuries earlier by John Donne in his epic lines, "No man is an island entire of itself. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind. And therefore do not send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee." Much of the heartbreak of the book is heightened by our present awareness of the plight of later sets of migrants fleeing disaster, driven from their homes not by the dust and drought of the 1930s, but by the hurricanes and floods of 2005 and 2017 and September 2018 and most certainly in 2019. And of course, those fleeing death and destruction from the carnage of war-torn Syria and the chaos of turbulent Central America. One can only hope that the newest homeless will find a more receptive and compassionate America than did their Dust Bowl predecessors. So sharp was the contrast between the reception given the migrants in The Grapes of Wrath and the noble words of Emma Lazarus enshrined at the base of the Statue of Liberty, that I was moved to put the following thoughts into verse. On reading The Grapes of Wrath, or the Statue of what? The huddled masses who yearn to breathe free, how lucky they were that they came over the sea. Had they made the arduous journey by road, they'd have met the grim fate of the family Joad. It was okay, you're in, come unburden your load, and not okey, you're out, for the likes of Tom Joad. California made clear, and their methods were cruel, from the slashing of wages to the high price of fuel, from the beatings and cheatings and swung baseball bat, slim pickings, knife stickings, and the unwelcome mat. If you're poor, you're a threat, so understand that you just don't meet the criteria on Liberty's statue. But history rolled on, as we all know it must. The country survived that dread bowl of dust. And one thing is clear as the story unfolds, 'twas Steinbeck for whom the Nobel Prize tolls.
Thank you, Dennis. So our next person to read or do her performance is Daphne Fineman. So Daphne, if you could come on up. Mrs. Claus, underneath her red robe, I present.
This is a little piece of my book. It's called Lives Well Lived. And just to fill you in very quickly, what happened is they lived in Mallorca in the late 1870s. And then they had to leave very quickly because they were Jews. And they went to Barcelona, which didn't do them any better. And they found when they were there, the same thing was applying there. So they had to leave again, and they went to Holland, which accepted them at that time. And then politics changed there too. So in the end, they went to England. And this is where we are now, where I'm going to read to you. By that time, they were no longer Jews. They had almost assimilated. The girls had married Gentiles, and the whole group really were not practicing Jews anymore. So we're going to start at the place where this is the start of my story, in the middle of it. We looked at, she had diamonds sewn into the children's skirts, so that when they left, her husband was a jeweler, and they sewed these diamonds. He told her to sew them into the skirts so they had some money with them, because they weren't allowed to take money out of Spain. So she looked at the diamond the next day. He said that it was too fine. She showed it to a cousin, and he said it was too fine, but he recommended talking to his friend Mr. Klein, who was a jeweler. He said that the jeweler was a very honest man and he'll give some recommendation on what to do with the diamond in order to find the best-selling price. The next day his wife said she would keep the children amused while Sarah and Becky, the sister-in-laws, went to visit Mr. Klein. The jeweler said, "This is the finest stone I have ever seen, and its value is worth several thousands of pounds." She realized that she had let the other diamonds go for much too little, but they had served their purpose at the time, and there was no use crying over spilt milk. They were gone. The jeweler took her to a very fine purveyor of diamonds, and indeed, he gave her what the stone was worth. She realized that this English gentleman was how she thought of most English people, honest, straightforward and truthful. She maintained this image of English people for the rest of her life. She immediately felt very comfortable with her situation. Now, she had money she could use to fix the house up, buy furniture, and maybe do something with the shop. Her cousin had found the shop, this little place. She didn't want a shop, but she needed somewhere to live. So they had gone to Liverpool in England. The upper area of the building was extremely dingy and obviously had not been used for some time. The first job she performed was to open all the windows so she could get rid of this damp, dark, smelly odour and let some fresh air in. Mr. Growing knew of an odd job man who could come in and scrub the house out. He also knew a painter who could paint the house and make it presentable for the family to move in. Next morning, two very jovial and seemingly kind men came to start turning this miserable place into a home. All the walls were painted a soft beige and the woodwork was painted off-white, just like she had seen in the house in Holland, on the homes in Holland. When all was finished, the house looked very cheerful and bright. Even the shop looked good. Sarah thought maybe it would be possible to rent out the shop. The next item on her list was to seek out the local furniture stores. When she found them, she was a little disappointed in what was available. She thought only of the beautiful furniture she had left behind in Mallorca and allowed herself for the first time to shed a tear or two. She mustn't let the girls see her cry. After all, what was most important was that they were all safe and the girls did not have to feel uneasy. Then the boys would be just fine. Nothing seemed to bother them. Sarah noticed that the boys seemed very interested in the Samuels family girls who were cousins, but that was okay. She decided to look into the local antique stores and see what they had to offer in the way of furniture. She was amazed at how beautiful some of the pieces were. She purchased some wonderful pieces and lots of them were made in France, with wickerwork built into the wood and small tables with marble tops, chaises longues covered in velvet and beautiful leather small chairs. After she bought the articles she wanted, she asked the dealer if he had a dining room set that was large enough to seat all of her children. He told her that he had nothing that would be large enough for her. Then he suggested that she go to the local auction house and speak with them. The auctioneer told her that they had a very large dining set coming up at the next auction, and she would have to bid on it. Sarah had never been in an auction before and was not sure what it meant to bid on it. Along came a very ruddy-looking man with grey hair, kind eyes, stocky and short and very cheerful, laughing at her near Yvette. He sat her down in a chair and stuck a paddle in her hand. Now, you must ask yourself, what do I want to pay for this dining set? After you make up your mind, you join in the bidding. Not too soon, mind you. When it gets close to what you want to pay, hold your paddle up. Make sure the auctioneer sees you. Then they will have the table go first and the matching chairs separately. If it were me buying the set, I would bid not more than £200 for the table and £150 for the 10 chairs. As he was talking to her, this very tall, handsome man came over towards them. He said, "Mr. Jones, Are you giving my business away to this beautiful woman? Madam, I am Mr. Bertram Reeves, the owner of the auction house. I take it that you have never participated in an auction before. Well, it is mostly men who are in my audience. They are buying for their businesses, so they will be surprised to see a female up against them. They will try to scare you off by pushing up the price. Don't let them do it. Stop bidding when you reach the amount you are willing to pay. I will see you here on Saturday, Mrs. Solomons. Sarah arrived early and sat towards the front. That was a mistake, because everybody could see who was bidding. Mr. Jones was there, moving furniture about. He came running up to her. Mrs. Solomons moved to the back of the room where no one can see who is bidding. As all the people came into the room, there was an air of excited chatter all around her. There were few women, mostly wives of the men who had paddles in their hand. Sarah felt very comfortable and liked the feeling of anticipation at the auction. The first hour was mostly smaller pieces of furniture with a lot of chatter and banter between Mr. Reeves and the audience. There was a little arguing between men that won the bid and men who were too slow putting their paddles up after the auctioneer had banged his gavel down. Then came her beautiful mahogany table that she was looking forward to buying. The bidding was slow, and she was biding her time like Mr. Johnson told her. She was quite excited with all the goings-on. At last it was her turn to bid. Mr. Reeves had started the bidding at £40, and it went quite slowly at first, but built up quickly to £100. Then it slowed again, and she put her paddle up again and again, every £10 until it reached £180. Mr. Reeves knocked his gavel down to her. Mrs. Solomons, you have your dining table. Immediately after the table, the chairs came up. The chairs had carved backs and ball and claw feet. Mr. Reeves said, who will give me £50 for these fine mahogany Chippendale chairs? The man beside her said, what would I do with 10 chairs? And put his paddle down. But the very wealthy buyer from famous department store called Marshall and Snellgroves was very disgruntled that he had lost the dining room table to a woman. He knew the company could not make enough profit by paying more than £125 for the table, as they needed to make at least 60 or 70% of which he had purchased. So what the beautiful Chippendale chairs came up for auction, he was determined to make her pay much more than they were worth. He tried to make her bid higher and higher. Then Mr. Reeves stepped in. Mr. Bailey, you really don't want to stop this charming woman into buying the matching chairs for her table. I never thought of you as a cad, always as a perfect gentleman. With that remark, Mr. Bailey went red in the face, looked ashamed, and sat down. Sarah was over the moon. She had succeeded in buying this beautiful English dining set that was nicer than the one she had left behind in Mallorca. She felt flushed with success, and she was very excited that she had triumphed over this mean businessman. After the auction, she went to the cashier where Mr. Reeves was standing. She thanked him profusely for intervening. He told her, don't expect me to ever do that again. That set belonged to me. My late wife and I bought it from an aristocrat who had fallen on hard times, like many others of his class. It was just perfect at that time. But we, like you, had a large family to sit at the table, and now we cannot use it anymore. My family is dispersed to different countries and different areas, or I am just a lonely old man. I would like to ask you to join me in an afternoon tea at our local cafe next door. I can hear you have an accent, and I would like to talk to you about which country you are from and what brought you here to Liverpool. After that time, she joined him for tea. They met very frequently and eventually became firm friends. Her first close friend in England. She told him about her husband and family and why they had to leave their beautiful home in Mallorca because of the Jewish faith. It felt good to unburden her life to this non-judgmental man who was a real humanitarian and genuinely interested in what she had to say. She told him areas she allowed herself to feel unafraid, and it felt good. Allow me to walk you back to your house, Mrs. Solomons. It is not too far from here. If you agree to meet me again next time, I will tell you about my life, which is rather ordinary compared to yours. When they arrived at her home, he shook her hand and said how much he had enjoyed talking with her. Next time we meet, I want to talk to you about an interesting business proposition that could possibly help your situation. I watched you in the auction house when you were bidding, and I could see that you were really into it.
Okay, our next reader is going to be Joey Schur.
They're here. They're here. When did it start? I guess about 3 weeks after we moved into our new retirement home. It wasn't a new home, 40 years old, but new for us. 2 bedrooms and a 2-car garage, which gave us, excuse me, plenty of room for storage, since we only had 1 car. I was sitting in my easy chair in the living room when Ellie called me. "John, come here." She didn't say where here was, but I put down my Stephen King book, pushed out of my chair, and walked into the kitchen. Ellie said, "There," and pointed to 3 shiny purple ants. They were bigger than usual, almost the size of a housefly. "I will not have ants in my kitchen." I tore a paper towel off the roll, squashed the ants, and put the towel in the trash basket. "There," I said. "Don't worry." We had ants in North Carolina when I was growing up, John. I hate ants, especially in my kitchen. "Those are different, but ants are ants." She was shaking her head no. "I took care of it," I said, but she kept shaking her head. The next day, when we ate breakfast, there were a dozen of them parading on the floor. I paper toweled them. Ellie said, "You must do something right now." So she sent me to the Home Depot. They had an assortment of highly colored boxes, all promising to kill ants. I picked out 3 different boxes. Ellie told me exactly where to place the traps. That should do it, I thought. I don't know if ants can see or smell or read minds, but these ants traipsed right past my traps. The next morning, there were maybe 4 dead ants, many more scurrying on the floor, the wall, the counter. For 15 minutes, we squashed ants, but no sooner did we think we killed them all when more came. It reminded me of an old joke. I told Ellie, a guy killed an ant and his whole family came to the funeral. Ellie was in no mood for humor. She said, "I can't stand this. You must do something." I called the homeowner association and told them it was an emergency. 5 hours later, the guy from the association came over. "They're big," he said, "and a funny color. I'll spray all around the house, and they should be gone in a day or 2. He was wrong. It became a routine. First thing in the morning for 15 minutes, we would crush ants with paper towels, our shoes, our hands. Then again, before lunch and dinner, the ants kept striding around as if they owned the place. I told Ellie it would get better. She told me to do something in a high-pitched voice, not quite a scream. A couple of times, I caught her crying. I opened the phone book and called the company with the biggest ad under pest control. A man in a neatly pressed blue uniform came over. The name on his shirt was Lopez. "The ants are big," he said, "and a funny color. I've never seen any like this before. Don't worry, I'll spray, especially outside the house. They've already sprayed, I told him. Not with the chemicals I'll use. Don't worry, tomorrow there will be fewer ants, and in 2 days they'll be gone. Why didn't I feel better? In 2 days they weren't gone. I called the company and talked to the supervisor. Yeah, he said, Lopez told me about your ants. They're different. He used a highly toxic spray. I'll tell you what I'll do. Lopez will come out again to spray, and he'll also capture some ants. We'll send them to the state pest control office to see what they think. How long will that take? Oh, maybe 60 days, maybe 90. I shuddered. I hope this next spray works. Where do they come from? Who knows? They could be in the walls. The oil people are doing some fracking about a mile from you. Maybe that disturbed the ants or cracked the earth, so they came to you. That's just a guess. Guesses didn't help much. Ellie was crying quite a bit now. What could I do? She suggested we just burn the house down. I think she was kidding. Did she want to go to a movie? She said no. When we watched her favorite TV shows, like Shark Tank, she didn't seem to be paying attention. After Lopez sprayed a second time, the ant population in our kitchen shrank to a dozen or so all day. Maybe finally we were getting the upper hand. But that night I awoke at 3 a.m. There was a soft humming coming from the kitchen. The ants were back. Armies of them. I didn't say anything to Ellie. It wasn't necessary. She heard the humming too. We killed a lot of ants and then sat around the kitchen table silently. She went to get a cup of coffee. She opened the cabinet door and gasped, "Oh God." I jumped up and looked in the cabinet. Ants, 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 crawling over the plates and cups and bowls. We had to do something. I called the exterminator supervisor. He was at a loss. The only thing he could recommend was to put a tent over the house and fumigate with the strong poison. It worked for termites, and he was sure it would kill the ants. It cost a lot of money, $3,000. What else could we do? So we double-bagged all our food and spent 2 nights at a motel. As we drove out the garage, I noticed the Johnson house, our neighbor. The man from the village was spraying there. After the tenting, we moved back in. We woke up the next day and the ants were gone. Hallelujah. We've been through a lot, but it was worth it. Ellie was smiling again. We celebrated by going to dinner at Denny's, and we slept soundly. The next morning, Ellie went into the kitchen. She shrieked, "Look!" The ants were chewing the wooden leg of the table. There was a shallow hole about the size of a silver dollar with the raw wood exposed. I thought they'd gotten bigger. Ellie was trembling. A sick feeling clenched my stomach. Until then, I had tried to show her strength and optimism, but now that would no longer work. Without asking her, I phoned Bob Butler, the realtor who had helped us buy the house. After the usual "how are yous," I told him, "Bob, we want to sell the house." "Oh, sure. We can come to your office anytime today. What's good for you?" "This is so unusual. You've only been there about a month. Did something come up?" "We just want to leave." "May I ask why?" "We've been invaded by ants. We can't fight them anymore." He was silent. Then he said, "Ants, yeah. There were 2 other houses about a mile from you. The boss said we can't list houses with an ant problem. If we disclose it, no one will buy, and if we don't disclose it, will be sued. So sorry. My head felt like it was about to pop. Our life savings were in that house. We'll sue you, I shouted. You sold us a house with ants. I didn't know. I swear, I'm so sorry. I slammed down the phone, a beaten man who wanted to cry, but not with Ellie there. In my toolbox, there was a cigarette I'd hidden 3 years ago. The last time I quit smoking. That didn't make me feel better. In the bathroom, I took 2 of Ellie's Valiums. Ellie was sitting on the couch, crying and shaking all over. I called her, but she didn't answer. I made up my mind. After throwing our clothes into the car, I helped Ellie off the couch and buckled her into the passenger seat. We drove off, heading for her sister's. Halfway down the block, the guy from the Homeowners Association was spraying another house. We rode in silence. I kept thinking about all the money we would lose if we couldn't sell the house later. Maybe I'd have to look for a job. We stopped for lunch at a McDonald's. A silent lunch, as if a child had died. After lunch, the car wouldn't start. Under the hood, the engine was swarming with hungry ants. They were chewing everything plastic. One of them bit my hand. It bled and it stung. Sucking at the wound, I looked up. I whimpered and burst, and then bawled uncontrollably. The ants were marching in disciplined formation from my car toward the restaurant.
So our next reader is going to be Jackie Jorgenson.
Well, it's a very dark November night. Not even a star in the sky. In our home sit on the hillside, between the river and the top of the mountain. It's not a kind of place where people go for a walk around the house. It's a jungle. And the only sounds coming out of our house was a little snoring and a little breathing. All is quiet. Everybody is asleep. Not even the birds are awake. And suddenly, bang, 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 bang on our front door. He knocked again, bang, 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 and really hit the door. My father jumped out of the hammock that he sleeps in and says, "Who the hell is there?" "Oh, no, it's me, Mateo compadre. I'm scared to death. You have to come out and take a look at this. Look up here." My father stumbled over his pants. My mother lit the kerosene lamp for light. And my father finally opened the door and a patch of light shone right over Mateo. And he's walking around with one leg of his pants way up, and the other one is down, and he's bare-chested and has only one suspender covering his trousers. And he's walking around circles. Oh my God, I knew it was coming, We better prepare. Oh my God, here he comes. Take a look at that, compadre, take a look. My father took a look at the sky and took one giant step and went to the other room and came back with a gallon jug of rum. He made his own rum at the bottom of the hill. So he held the bottle against it, glop, 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 drink. And then, take a drink. And Mateo took the jug and go. And he gave it back to them. My father took another drink. And then they saw my mother standing in the corner going, "Jesus, you're praying so hard. Take a drink." And she took a drink. And the jug went around and around. By now, my sister and I are looking through the cracks in the wall because we're not allowed to go into the living room when people were there. But it's so hard to see the sky through a crack in the wall.
You just can't see it. So we ran to the kitchen and stuck our head out the window this way. My sister said, those are going to be a bunch of drunks. It's not the end of the world. Jesus is not coming. If he comes, you tell him I'm asleep and she left. So I stayed there because if Jesus was coming, I have to see him because I have to ask him, why now? I'm just a little girl and all I want to do is grow up. I want to grow up. I want to get married with a long, beautiful girl and maybe have a baby. And then if you want to come, go ahead. But nothing happened. I got very sad and very scared, and I decided, okay. So I left the window, and I lay in that bed, listening to, take a drink, take another drink, here, take a drink, take a drink, take a drink. And every time I'm talking to God up there, don't do it, don't do it, don't come yet, please. And this way I went to sleep fighting and begging Jesus, I want to grow up. Please don't come, it's too soon. I haven't had a chance. And take a drink, take a drink. I went to sleep evidently. And the next day I got up and every place that I looked, I looked around for Jesus. He was nowhere to be found. My parents are not talking about it because we were not supposed to be watching. We couldn't ask questions. But every place I went, I looked under the table, under the beds, behind the bush, upstairs, downstairs, no Jesus. And I said, my sister is right, they're drunks. Life went on, and 2 weeks later, one of my father's cousins came to visit. And he's an intelligent man because he went to school up to the 4th grade and he can read newspapers. And he comes and says to my father, compadre, our world is coming to an end. We're never going to have a chance. It's not going to be the same as it's been. My father said, what happened? And he said, the Americans came to the island, built the base in the west end of the island, and they're flying airplanes and just taking over the whole island. And they had such a big party celebrating, they had lights going out the stands going like this. Lights, searchlights. And I knew then, if you don't get an education, you're going to believe the wrong people all the time. Thank you very much. I told my story.
We're going to have Peggy come up, and she's the last of our storytellers. So we save the best for last.
I just had a hip replacement last Tuesday. And so I'm still on a walker. And so it's been kind of fun because my husband has waited on me, and that never happens. It's always been the opposite. I didn't know he could do it. But I want to thank especially my team, my publishing club team. Look, I was so incapacitated, I couldn't do any of these things. And look at this wonderful dinner you put together for you, and all the things they've done for you. I'm so pleased. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So here goes my story. My story is my BFF Beamer. As you can tell, Beamer, my BFF, my best friend forever, was a border collie. He actually had a sense of humor, as you can tell. Well, when I first met Beamer, we locked eyes. Right away, we knew we were best friends forever. He dropped his frisbee at my feet, and I knew what I was supposed to do with the frisbee. I walked out to the grassy mound in front of our courtyard, and I threw it. Perfect throw, perfect catch. Thrilling game frisbee. This went on as a routine daily. Every day I'd go get Beamer so we could play frisbee. But there came a time when Beamer, next picture, there it is. There came a time when Beamer would bring his frisbee to my gate. And if I wasn't there, he'd drop it in front of my gate, like saying, as soon as you see this, come and get me. So I would, of course. I mean, we were addicted to the game of frisbee, besides we were best friends. And so this went on for about a year and a half. And we were all very happy. But then Diane, his owner, decided they had to move on. Well, broke our hearts. But what could we do? Diane decided to go on, and so they had to. She was the owner. So the last thing Beamer did before he left was leave the frisbee in front of my gate. After that, for about a year, Diane and I exchanged emails, mostly to find out about Beamer and his partner, Capri, a colleague. Well, one day, Diane wrote and she says, I put Capri, the colleague, down yesterday. Beamer's not doing well. His heart's broken. But he still runs because that's what Beamer does. So exactly a year ago last September, I rushed my husband to emergency on the verge of death. I spent the day by his bedside. And when I came home, I turned on my computer. And on my desktop was this picture, Beamer with his frisbee in his mouth, in front of my gate. I thought it was in sympathy for my husband's illness. So I wrote Diane, how's Beamer? She wrote back, I put him down today. So before Beamer left, he left me a message. And so he went on to the happy herding grounds in the sky. But my son said, Mom, when it's your time to cross the river Styx, Beamer will probably be there to cross you over. Thank you.
We're going to do our raffle, and I'm going to ask Miranda to come up here.